In addition, Congress should immediately vote to block Joe Biden's recent call-up of reserve forces. We're sending now troops over to Europe to fight.
It is not lost on us that this comes almost exactly 4 years since Trump's infamous phone call pressuring Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and that he appears to have learned absolutely nothing from that first impeachment. It also speaks volumes about the state of the Republican Party, that this guy is their front runner for 2024, and he is threatening to unseat Republicans if they do not fall in line. Joining me here at the table, New York Times editorial board member Mara Gay and founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and host of the Independent Americans podcast, Paul Reichhoff. Charlie is also still with us. So, Paul, let me start with you. I mean, this is just bonkers. He is again saying the quiet part out loud and doing basically what he did the first time around, leveraging our national security, our foreign policy, all to his own political advantage and arguably to that of Vladimir Putin.
Well, he's holding our national security hostage. This is the Tommy Tuberville tactic, which has become popular in Washington in the last couple of weeks and just cost Alabama Space Command. President Biden made a decision just a couple of hours ago that Space Command is not going to Alabama. It's going to stay in Colorado, in part because of Tommy Tuberville's antics, because of the atmosphere in Alabama, and because of the restrictions on abortion rights. How are you going to recruit in Alabama for people to join Space Command right now? That's the strategy that Tommy Tuberville has put forward, holding our national security hostage. This is good for the base. It's good for Trump's base. It gets him riled up, but it's bad for our national security. It's bad for our troops. It's bad for NATO. And ultimately, I think it's bad for his politics with independent Americans. Independents aren't buying this. Overwhelmingly, Americans support for Ukraine, independents especially. And I think in the end, it's going to cost him those independents down the stretch.
Americans are waking up with this idea that maybe for the last several years they have not been paying as much attention to the courts. And now you have a Supreme Court justice that is basically saying to the public, you have no oversight over what this court does. That is a scary moment for our democracy. Just the idea that a justice of the Supreme Court thinks there is no congressional oversight to that institution.
Yeah, the norms are gone. There's a falling out of integrity. There's a loss of honor. I mean, we just talked about how the Republican Party, the party of John McCain, is now attacking the military. Ron DeSantis is running on attacking the military. That's upside down world. And now you've got a Supreme Court justice arguing there shouldn't be ethics regulations. Like, that's how low we've come. So everything has become politicized. Everyone has become a political actor. And every institution in our country has been compromised, from the Department of Defense to the Supreme Court. And this is why America doesn't trust anything anymore. They don't trust political leaders. They don't trust institutions. And that's the real loss for all of us, is this loss in the trust and the integrity of our democracy.
Yeah, and if we don't restore it, I fear where we're going from here, heading over a cliff. Cabinet members, Paul, who have endorsed him, besides Mark Meadows, include Russell Vought, Matthew Whitaker, and Rick Grenell. In Trump world, do these voices carry more weight than former secretaries of defense, General Mattis, John Kelly, Bill Barr, just people who actually served at the highest levels of government, and were at one point, even though they served for Trump, were considered the adults in the room?
No. They don't carry more weight, but I think even more so, I don't trust any of them.
Yeah.
Like, they say that now. They say they won't endorse them, but how many times before have we seen people fall in line and do a 180 when Trump gets power and he starts to gather steam? So I don't trust any of them. And there's plenty of people who would be lining up at the door if he's back in the White House to take a job. I mean, this is, I think, a reflection of how big his movement is, because it really is a social movement, much more than a political campaign. There's plenty of people who are in line for power who will be right behind the others, ready to stand forward if he gets reelected. And even if he doesn't, because I continue to say it's also a national security story. It's not just a political story, but it's how many millions of angry people can he motivate to do things, and how many of them have guns, how many of them are part of extremist groups. It always has to be a national security threat, and I think the most important one is former Secretary of Defense Esper, who they used to call Jesper because he was so in line with Trump. He says no. Because of a national security issue.
Let me ask you really quickly, and we're about 30 seconds left. The Republicans that are running now against Donald Trump, they're unable to call him out for what he is, even though they're politically running against him. Why do you think that is? Why is Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, they kind of meander?
They're cowards. They're cowards, or they're scared. They're playing their chips. They want to be VP. I mean, Christie's the only one that's out there throwing blows consistently. The rest of them are just strategizing, and they're keeping their powder dry. I mean, they're just waiting because I think many of them think he's inevitable. And right now, the percentage lead he's got, he's looking like he is.
And they're all gunning for a possible...
They're covering their butts. CYA drill.